The trig functions look like they'd be very, very difficult to graph, but they're really not. All right, it's really just finding a few numbers. I actually draw the same exact graph each time. I just change the scale on my graph. So when we go and actually, this file doesn't have any graphing in it. When we start graphing these, if we just treat it as I'm always going to graph the basic same thing, and I'm just going to adjust the scale on my graph, then they're very, very easy to graph because I draw the same thing each time. I just adjust the scale. So it's more of learning how to do the scale than it is learning how to actually graph the thing. All right. So sine and cosine functions, they both are waves. They both go up and down, and they look basically the same. They're just kind of shifted a little bit. All right. So if you look at these two things right here, all right, you've got a sine graph and a cosine graph. This is sine. This is cosine. How do I know? Sine starts at 0. Cosine starts at the max. Now on that graph, it starts at 1 because that's the max of a regular, normal, nothing happening to a cosine curve. All right, so that's the difference there. They have high, low points, maximums, and minimums. Okay, sines have max and mins that don't happen on. This one is not important to me. All right, so this one I'm a little X by. All right, sines start at the 0, cosines don't. All right, sines start at the 0 and cosines don't. All right, so right there, I have two different things to see which is which. All right, now obviously I say sine starts at 0. This sine doesn't start at 0, okay? But this is not the maximum point. So this is a sine curve. This is a cosine curve. All right, the cosine curve is going to look like a U from the y-axis. All right, looks like a U. That's not a very good one. Looks like a U from the y-axis. All right, there's lots of little things you can look for here. All right, this is a sine curve here that's just been shifted up slightly. All right, so it's been shifted up. So like if that was the axis right there, so it's been shifted up 200. All right, and that's what we'll talk about really how to do these is how to look at the graphs and be like, oh, okay, I move it up this much. Oh, it stretches out this much. It condenses this much, whatever's going on with it. All right, so some things to look for. These are things that I want to figure out because it makes it really easy to graph. Midline is the horizontal middle of the graph. It's the y-axis. Standard is the y-axis. All right, y-axis is standard, but the shifts are going to move it up and down. The period is the distance between two peaks or two minimums. It's the amount of time it takes one thing to go all the way through and start over again. Okay, but since they're a wave, there are lots of different ways to look at it. So if you pick out two maximums and find the distance between them, that's the period. Okay, the amplitude is how far away it goes from the midline. All right, so from the midline to the top or the midline to the bottom. All right, how much does it deviate from its center point? Those are the three very most important things to be able to go ahead and figure out because they're going to help me put the numbers on my graph. All right, put the numbers on my graph. All right, so given the graph on the left, determine the following. So where is the midline? All right, so the midline, usually you'll see dots, all right, on the midline, but it's right down the center. And you can also take 700 and 100 and average it. All right, 700 and 100, the average is 400. So the midline is y equals 400, all right, because y is always 400. The amplitude is 300 because it goes from 400, 300 in that direction. Okay, the period, distance between the two tops, all right, there to there, or the next two, or it could be here to here, all right, that could be the period. So these in different colors. All right, let's do the period in red. All right, so the period could be there to there, or it could be there to there. All right, and that is from 0 to 16, and then that one is from 16 to 32, so it's also 16. All right, the max value, what does it get you at the top? It gets to 700. The minimum value, what's the lowest it gets to? 100. Which trig function is it? It's a cosine. How do I know? Because it makes that U shape. All right, it makes that U shape from the y-axis. All right, from the y-axis, so it's a cosine curve.